The sound of clinking glasses and hollow laughter from that Thanksgiving dinner still echoes in my mind. The chandelier above my parents' dining table scattered its light across faces I hadn't seen in years, people who somehow couldn't find time to visit my cafe, even though it sat just a few blocks from their precious law firm. "Emma," my sister Sophia's polished voice broke through the chatter. "Why don't you share your big news?" I looked up slowly, already bracing for what was coming. Sophia sat poised in her designer suit, her engagement ring catching the light like it was part of the performance. That glint in her eyes said it all. She was gearing up to remind everyone why she was the family's shining star. "I made senior partner," she announced, smile radiant. "The youngest in the firm's history." The table came alive with applause and admiration. Mom's pride filled the room while Dad raised his glass. "To Sophia Harrison, the next generation of Harrison and Associates." I took a sip of my wine, my thoughts drifting to the stack of signed agreements sitting on my desk at home. But no one at this table would guess that. To them, I was just the underachiever who spent her days steaming milk and ringing up lattes instead of practicing law. "And you, Emma?" Aunt Patricia's tone dripped with polite disdain. "Still running that little coffee shop?" "The Wild Vine Café," I corrected softly. "Yes, still running it." Sophia laughed lightly, trading a look with our cousin Diana. "You know, there's always a spot for you at the firm if you're ready for a real career." I twirled my fork through my potatoes, remembering the morning's meeting, the one where I signed a multi-million-dollar contract with one of the city's biggest developers. But that was my secret. For now. "The cafe's doing fine," I said evenly. "Fine enough to cover rent?" Mom asked, brows knitting. "Downtown property must cost a fortune." I almost smiled. If only they knew I owned the entire building, and the one next to it. "I manage," I replied simply. Sophia launched into another story about a massive corporate merger, her parents hanging on every detail. She'd always been the golden child, top of her class, law school honors, flawless career trajectory. And me. I was the disappointment, the one who'd traded courtroom ambition for a coffee grinder and an espresso machine. "I just closed the Anderson acquisition," Sophia said proudly. "You should have seen their lawyers' faces when I caught their loophole. Mr. Chen was so impressed. He's moving all his accounts to our firm." I kept my expression calm at the mention of James Chen. If she only knew who actually owned half the properties he was developing. Later in the kitchen, Mom cornered me while I helped with dishes. "You're so bright, Emma. Why waste your talent in a cafe?" I set down a glass and wiped my hands. "Because not everyone wants to be a lawyer, Mom," she sighed. "But look at your sister. Designer clothes, luxury car, that gorgeous penthouse. Don't you want that kind of life?" I thought of my own penthouse, purchased quietly through one of my holding companies, with a better view and better furniture. "I'm happy with mine," I said. Mom shook her head. "I just worry. The restaurant business is risky." "What about your future?" "A family." I held back a laugh. If only she knew about my investments, the buildings I owned, the partnerships I'd built. The cafe was just the visible part of something much larger. When the night wound down and everyone was leaving, Sophia found me by the door. "I meant what I said," she told me, voice soft but commanding. "Dad would find a position for you. You could start in corporate law, work your way up." "Thanks," I said lightly. "But I'm doing just fine." She frowned. "Emma, be serious. You can't pour coffee forever. Don't you want to be someone?" If only she knew, I already was. I'd built something for myself, all right, something far greater than anyone in my family could imagine. And tomorrow morning they'd finally see it. "I should head out," I said, glancing at my watch. "Early morning at the cafe." Sophia smirked. "Of course. Those coffee beans won't brew themselves." I didn't bother replying. The drive home was quiet. Just me and the soft hum of the city I secretly owned more of than anyone realized. My real office sat above the Wild Vine Café, tucked away behind an unmarked door. To the world and my family it was just a cozy coffee shop. But behind that disguise, I was building an empire piece by piece. The cafe was my cover. What they saw as a hobby was actually the front of a growing network of real estate investments, partnerships, and acquisitions that stretched across downtown. When I unlocked my office, the city lights spilled through the windows. I sat at my desk, pulling a thick folder labeled Chen Acquisitions toward me. Tomorrow, James Chen, one of the most powerful real estate developers in the city, would walk into my cafe. Not as my sister's client, but as my partner. For years, James had quietly helped me purchase properties through a maze of shell companies. Even his own attorneys, including Sophia, had no idea I was the one behind them. I opened the final document, the merger contract that would unite all my companies under a single name, Harrison Capital Group. The irony of using my family's name wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed. A message from Sophia lit the screen. Dinner was fun. Oh, and Mr. Chen mentioned he might stop by your cafe tomorrow. Try not to embarrass me. He's our biggest client. I smiled and set the phone aside. Tomorrow would be entertaining, to say the least. The paperwork was flawless. Once signed, the merger would expose the truth. The so-called barista they pitted controlled nearly half of downtown's prime real estate. 5 years of patience, precision, and anonymity were about to pay off. The next morning, the Wild Vine Café was already buzzing when I arrived early. My manager, Kate, was prepping for the day. "The private room's ready," she said, handing me a coffee. "Though I still don't get why Mr. Chen wants to meet here instead of his office." Smiled. "Because some deals deserve a personal touch." At exactly 9, James Chen stepped inside, effortlessly confident in a black sweater and slacks. He had the kind of quiet authority that never needed to announce itself. "Good morning, Miss Harrison," he said with a hint of amusement. Then, loud enough for the staff to hear, "Mind making me a vanilla latte?" "Of course," I replied, slipping behind the counter. This was our usual act, the powerful developer and the friendly cafe owner chatting over coffee, while behind the scenes, we finalized multi-million-dollar transactions. The milk hissed under the steamer just as the door chimed again. Turned, and there she was, Sophia. She looked surprised to see James. "Mr. Chen, I didn't expect to find you here this early." James accepted his drink with a smile. "Ah, Miss Harrison, your sister makes the best vanilla latte in the city. Care to join our meeting?" "Meeting?" she repeated, blinking. "Yes," he said smoothly. "About the downtown redevelopment deal." He gestured toward the private room. "Shall we?" Sophia hesitated, confusion flickering across her face, but followed. Her heels echoed across the hardwood floor as we stepped into the softly lit room. It looked ordinary enough. Polished table, comfortable chairs, quiet atmosphere, except for the discreet camera positioned in the corner, ready to record the signing. James opened the folder and took out the thick stack of contracts. "We'll need one more witness," he said, glancing at Sophia. "Perhaps your sister could do it." Sophia gave a short, uneasy laugh. "Emma. Oh no, she just runs the cafe." "She doesn't. She doesn't need to be part of this," Sophia objected, her voice tight with impatience. James glanced at her, one brow lifting. "Actually, she's the most important person in this meeting." I took the seat at the head of the table, savoring the flicker of confusion that crossed my sister's face. "Funny you say that," I replied evenly. "Because, Sophia, you're the one who doesn't really need to be here. But since you are, sit tight. You're about to witness something enlightening." The door opened, and in walked my father, trailed by 2 partners from Harrison and Associates. They must have noticed Sophia enter and followed out of curiosity. "What's this about?" Dad demanded, scanning the room. "Sophia, why on earth are you meeting with Mr. Chen in a coffee shop?" Before she could speak, James stepped in smoothly. "I invited everyone here. I thought it was fitting to sign these papers where the entire story began." "Where it began," Sophia repeated, frowning. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward them. The formal consolidation of Harrison Capital Group's downtown portfolio, currently valued at a little over $300 million. The room went silent. Dad's face drained of color as the map on the screen came into focus. Half the downtown core, block after block, highlighted in gold. Harrison Capital Group, he murmured. My company, I said, voice steady. Though you might recognize some of the subsidiaries. Wild Vine Properties, Azure Development, Crown Point Investments. Sophia's mouth parted slightly. Those are the contracts our firm's been managing. The ones listed under Mr. Chen's investment accounts. Not exactly, James corrected her gently. Those accounts belong to your sister. I've just been assisting her, discreetly, for several years. Dad stared at me, speechless. That's absurd. Emma runs a coffee shop. She can't possibly. I reached into my folder and slid a copy of the final agreement across the table. The cafe was just the spark. When I bought this building 6 years ago, I saw an opportunity no one else did. Downtown was undervalued, fractured, waiting for someone to connect the dots. While you all laughed at my little coffee shop, I was meeting investors, studying market shifts, and acquiring properties one block at a time. Sophia grabbed the document, scanning the fine print with a lawyer's precision. Her expression shifted, from disbelief to shock, to something dangerously close to admiration. This is worth hundreds of millions, she whispered. You own half of downtown. More than half, James added, smiling faintly. Your sister has a rare eye for value, the kind that sees potential in a crumbling cafe and turns it into the cornerstone of an empire. Dad dropped into a chair, visibly shaken. Why didn't you tell us? I met his gaze. Would you have believed me? You were all too busy assuming I'd wasted my potential. It was easier to let you think that while I built something on my own terms. Sophia blinked hard, still reeling. But you serve coffee. You wear an apron. You. I cut her off with a smile. I wear whatever the job requires. Sometimes an apron, sometimes a tailored suit. The difference is, I never needed anyone else to validate my worth. James uncapped his pen and set it on the table. Shall we make this official? I signed first, my name flowing confidently across the page. James followed, dating his signature with a practiced flourish. And just like that, Harrison Capital Group became the largest private real estate owner in the city. Congratulations, James said, shaking my hand. Though I'll admit, I'll miss our secret board meetings disguised as coffee breaks. I grinned. Don't worry, the cafe's still open. Something tells me a few lawyers will suddenly discover they love our espresso. That evening, after the shock settled and my family scattered to process it all, I sat alone in my upstairs office, the city lights glowing beneath me. My city now in more ways than one. My phone buzzed with a message from Mom. Can we talk over coffee? I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back a single word. Then another message just for myself. I know a great little place downtown. The owner's doing quite well. I looked out the window, down at the cafe below. Still full of customers, laughter and clinking cups. The place everyone thought represented my limits was actually the foundation of everything I'd built. Sometimes success doesn't announce itself with a briefcase or a title. Sometimes it wears an apron, pours coffee, and quietly buys up the block. And sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's simply proving yourself right. I shut my laptop and headed downstairs. Tomorrow the headlines would tell the story. But tonight I had a cafe to run. And as always, that's where the best deals begin.